let's take a step back. If someone said to you, Mimi, I heard you do Qigong. What's Qigong? Where would you sort of start them off with that sort of awful interview question?
I think it's such a useful question because a lot of people don't really know what it is. I would say, first of all, it's an umbrella term that encompasses, up to 3,000 years of all movement, meditation, and breathing practices. And in that capacity, because it's inclusive of all of that, it's both martial, it's medical, and it's spiritual.
And in Chinese philosophy, that's not a big deal to be all three, right? Yeah. So from the West, it's like we wouldn't go to the doctors and expect spiritual advice and him to make us a badass fighter. That would be strange, right? You wouldn't go to the NHS and say, doctor, can I have some antibiotics and can I work on my side kick? And, that's kind of laughable. But tell me if I'm wrong here, obviously you know more about Chinese culture than me, but from a Chinese cultural background, that's just completely common sense.
It's common sense because there's not a separation of the physical, the spiritual, and the mental. It's all qi. And so, especially from a traditional Chinese medicine perspective, the qi flow through your body is governed and regulated by the organ system, and the organ system can go in and out of balance. So any practice that affects the qi is going to affect all of those qualities, your physical being, your emotional states, your mental clarity. And exercise from the very beginning has been packaged in with self-cultivation. There's sort of a few pillars that people would approach. First, you work on your virtue, which also affects our intention and our mind, and that will affect the qi. You work on the food you eat, so that will affect the qi that you take in and you use as life energy just through your body, digestively. You work on lifestyle, so depending on when you go to sleep and when you wake up, this will affect your qi. You work on meditation and breathing practices, visualization, because that will affect the heart, primarily the heart mind, and this is the supreme sovereign, like the emperor or empress of your body.
Very poetic Chinese systems, emperors and empresses.
And you do movement because you need to move the qi, and you need to keep the body supple, and you need to keep the body healthy, and you need to keep the body fit, but you don't need to make the body superhuman and godlike, which is the avenue and the direction that the Greeks went down and that we've in the West.
The Adonis-like physique, the statues of the superhuman, the perfect human.
Bigger, better, faster, and then more impossibly beautiful. Right? And this is the archetype of the Greek.
Stronger, more, isn't it? Yeah. Was it faster, stronger, higher? I think that's the motto of the Olympics, which is the sort of Western idea. And I think we could probably add more beautiful on the external to that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so tell me again, what is Qigong?
Okay, so it's medical, martial, and spiritual. It is a practice that I think it is intended to move the qi throughout the body in an unobstructed way, so uninhibited flow of qi. Okay. One of the hallmarks of it, I think, is that it circulates the blood without taxing the lungs, and this is really important. So many things we think of as exercise have to have cardiovascular work in them. We need to, run, swim, jog, bike, do fast yoga to get the heart rate up. But there's a Chinese idiom for everything. And one of the Chinese idioms that my teacher likes to say is "han chu qi bu chuan," which means the sweat pours, but the breath never quickens.
The sweat pours, but the breath never quickens. Okay, so the idea is generating heat without getting yourself out of breath. And you see that with some of the standing poses, right? People are sweating, but they're not doing anything aerobically. If anything, they're just standing there.
They're not breathing hard. They're not taxing the lungs, which in Chinese medicine are the chancellors to the heart. So if you want an emperor and sovereign and heart that is strong and stable, you want a second in command that's not depleted.
Because the chancellor is the second in command. This is it's going to confuse our German friends here who have the chancellor number one.
Sorry.
They killed their Kaiser a long time ago. They don't have Kaisers anymore. That's Emperor.
Vice Premier.
The Vice Premier. Okay, the President is the Vice President. Okay, we got it.
President.
Chancellor. Okay, got it. This both I love and this infuriates me about all Chinese arts are just poetry in a way which is beautiful and at the same time confusing sometimes. Okay, so obviously the question now becomes, actually one more thing first. It's spelt in different ways. So you sent me a Facebook message which is Qigong spelt K-I-G-O-N-G, like Qigong, as one word. I've seen that as two words. I've seen it spelled C-H-E-G-U-N-G. And these just sort of romanizations of Chinese characters. They're all the same, right? There aren't differences.
So K would be Japanese. I don't think I would have put in K, but Q is the conventional spelling of Qigong. So Qi is pronounced Qi.
Okay, I've also seen it spelled C-H-I. So
it also is C-H-I, which you hear Tai Chi.
Yeah.
Those two Qis don't refer to the same thing at all.
They don't refer to the same thing. Okay, that's great to know. Say the difference.
So Qigong, Qi is life energy. It's everything that is animating the world, refined or more dense. Tai Chi, or Tai Chi, J-I. Ji means ultimate, or the axis. So Tai Chi would be the supreme ultimate axis.
Modest. It's such a modest name, isn't it, Tai Chi? Very modest. Nice. Okay, so even though are they pronounced the same, or am I missing an inflection? I know Mandarin's got all these inflections that I might be missing. Is it just spelled differently, or is it pronounced differently?
They're two different characters. They're two different pronunciations. Part of the mess that we've inherited is China's civil war. So when the Taiwanese and the Chinese Communist government had a civil war, Taiwan broke off. The KMT, Kuomintang, broke off from mainland China and established its own republic in Taiwan. They developed a romanization system called Wade Giles.
Okay.
And that was the first generation of exported romanization to the West. So you get things like spelling Tai Chi as T-A-I-C-H-I. Then along comes the Chinese romanization, which is called pinyin, and its own interpretations on how to romanize Chinese. And that was a later exporting, but as mainland China grew sort of grew on the world stage, so to say, like the standardization for romanization switched over to mainland Chinese versions, which is pinyin. It's kind of considered the worldwide standard. So that's the QI. Okay. And in Tai Chi, it's T-A-I-J-I in the mainland Chinese romanization.
Gong.
So it's just
the same as Kung, like Kung Fu, Qigong, Qigong.
Kung Fu. Kung Fu should be pronounced in Mandarin, Kung Fu.
Okay.
G-O-N-G.
This is great. One of my students said, I've studied Japanese martial arts. And he said, what's the difference between Japanese and Chinese martial arts? And I said, well, it's a big subject, and I'm not an expert, but I said Chinese martial arts are complicated and they're confusing and ambiguous and poetic. They were the first, and I said, look, I don't know for sure, but they were the first words that came to mind. Like, it's big. China's a huge country and it's complicated. And at the same time, there's ambiguity, like characters can mean different things. And is that a fair description of like the world we're getting into here?
Well, I think it comes back to the Tao. The Tao is everything and cannot be named. It is the ultimate mystery and yet what animates all things. And so you have a foundational religious and philosophical tradition based on not having strict definitions.
Right. So it's very sort of Western scientific to say, but what exactly is a quark? How many centimeters is a meter? It's very specific. And the Chinese guys will be, well, it sort of depends, right? It depends on the context. Like, no, but is it 100 centimeters or 101? There's a way in which I always want to pin things down when I talk to Qigong or Tai Chi teachers, and they never let me pin them down. It's like trying to knit fog. And let me try and pin you down then. What is Qi? What is Qi or Qi? What is Qi from the Qigong? What is that?
Qi Qi, one of the best, so let me back up. Qi in Chinese culture is in everything. It's just woven into the fabric of the language. Tian qi is the weather. Qi se is the color of your face. Sheng qi is to get angry. So it's just the manifestation of energy. One of the best definitions I know of is qi is the energetic blueprint that gives rise to the formation of all matter.
So one more time slowly, because I like it. One more time.
Energetic blueprint that gives rise to the formation of all matter.
So the patterns you see.
The energetic blueprint.
What does energetic mean here? Help me out.
Well, I'll back it up in a minute.
Sure.
The energetic blueprint that gives rise to all matter. So this was in a book I read from it's called The Spark in the Machine. And he's a Western doctor who studied Chinese medicine. And he says Western medicine gets stumped at embryology. They don't know where and how it comes into existence, what that spark creates, how we grow in a very differentiated kind of and unique way. So embryology is kind of stumping Western medicine, but the Chinese have said, no, it's just qi. And that's the reason why there is differentiation in the world. So rocks come out of the earth, not as one solid, similar mass, same height, same quality. Rock emerges from the earth in variation and in different form and shape and color and texture. That's qi. So it's this, we can't say what energy is. We can't say what qi is. Science can't say what it is, but it is so just embedded into the way in which the Chinese have always looked at where things come from and why there's differentiation. So qi, okay, let me back this up again.
We've got time.
So there was something soupy, undifferentiated, a state of oneness called primordial qi. And this is before anything it came into existence. There was this huндун, this is primordial qi. And then the belief is that primordial qi at some point started to differentiate itself into yin and yang, rarefied and dense qi. Those then split into heaven as yang qi and earth as yin qi. And as those types of, that primordial qi differentiated into these two types of yin and yang qi, you had this movement and cyclical pattern of balance within a wholeness. And within yin and yang, what people often forget is that the seed of yin is always within yang and vice versa. Side note, this is why people who sometimes do yin yoga are so flabbergasted by Qigong, because yin yoga is flopping. They think it's yin. But when they start to move, they think that's yang. And with Qigong, you never separate them. The Chinese have never separated them. They're always together. Mm-hmm. And the orientation and integrity of practice is the balance of the two.
Right. The idea of yin, yoga or yang, anything would be
to primordial oneness into differentiation. You get then this sense of yin and yang, heaven and earth, and then riding onto the backs of yin and yang, where this is how the creation story goes, where the myriad creatures. And they created everything that we know, but they also brought in the five elements and the five phases and the seasons. And within that, there's a very syncretic view of each season relates to each element or phase. Each phase has a corresponding organ system within the body. For example, fire, summer, the season we're in, has the heart, the pericardium, the heart protector, the small intestine, which is like the filter for the heart, and something called the triple heater, which is like a thermostat. All these four organs relate to fire phase. Within the fire element organs, then you have a differentiation of times of day that they're more active. And it kind of gets, they have specific emotions that they correspond to, colors, sounds, odors, characteristics in or out of balance. All of this, though, is the same stuff as primordial qi. So everything that is happening, the qi flow through your organs and meridians, is handed down from and a product of that original primordial qi that split into yin and yang, that differentiated further into the 5 phases and seasons and organs. And so we are a manifestation of the oneness of everything that's out there. I just packed a book into 3 paragraphs.
Tao Te Ching or something, you could spend like an hour on each little chapter, couldn't you? There's a lot there. Okay, maybe we should take a breath. It feels like.
But you asked me what qi is, and that's my most straightforward, way to contextualize and explain it.
Great effort, because not an easy thing to do. I've asked a bunch of teachers that have been on, and it's not an easy question. I'm aware of that. Do you think it's useful for people that didn't have that sort of Chinese context of language and all the idioms and all the ways of looking at qi as just part of life? Do you think it's useful for them to take it on? I'm not sure myself, because I've seen people take on the idea and almost like treat it as a sort of magic power or a way to be special or something else. And I've gone, okay, how much do you have to be in that kind of cultural context to really get it?
I know teachers who are, well, wait, let me back up. Your question is, it sounds like people who are just starting to get into it and dabbling in it, how appropriate is it for them to take on? Generally, as Westerner or non-speaker?
The idea of qi, even. Is that a useful concept for people to take on?
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Mm-hmm.
I think, though, that having a good teacher is, like in any practice, in any tradition, really key. And if you have a good teacher, that teacher won't emphasize the orientation or practice as anything special. I mean, this is the thing that I really, really love about Taoism and Qigong, is that the true masters don't want to be found.
Bit of a bugger, huh? Makes it tricky. Why don't they want to be found?
Humility.
Uh-huh.
Not a need to prove anything. The sense that when you find unity and oneness with the Tao, it's nothing special. That there's unity with the Tao is, Zhuangzi has described it as the great, as high as the heavens, and as low as the shit and piss.
Nice.
And that's a huge relief for me. It's like, I can do all these practices, and all I'm doing is merging with what one historian described as the great clod of earth. H.R. Creel, the great clod of earth.
There's something that appeals to me about Taoism, that it has this ordinariness to it, or the magic of the ordinary, somehow it feels to me.
Precisely. It's the mystery, the ineffable, the impossible, the unfathomable simplicity of any moment. That is, it's like, thank goodness. There's no goal that's lofty. There's no kind of special experience to be had. It's just.
And that does contrast a little bit with some things in yoga culture, doesn't it? The sort of the God realm. I'm going to be this magnificent sort of Greek god combined with Indian magic powers, combined with massively sexy, but let's pretend that's not happening, combined with I'm going to be a celebrity, but let's pretend that's not happening, and I'm going to have all these that's very much like the rock star yoga teachers, like the opposite of Taoism. There's a tension there, right?
Suppose.
But I mean, you teach at Tri Yoga. I love Tri Yoga, and it is the home of the rockstar yoga teacher in London. It's there's some famous teachers there. There's some big egos there. And, I actually really like it, to be clear, and I definitely will come back when I'm in London. And there's no doubt about it, it's not exactly a Taoist place, right?
Yeah. So can I read you something?
Please, go for it.
Where is that? Yeah. So in answer to this, the 9 basic precepts from the 2nd century AD, so this is the Han Dynasty, that a Taoist priest or priestess, and this is the other thing I love about Taoism, that women have had a role. There have been the high sort of points of Taoist culture, which is the Tang Dynasty, the Han Dynasty. There were up to half the clergy members were women, and they were actually considered people who could advance more quickly to this simple oneness of the Tao than men. Anyway, so these precepts were ones that they took, and you think about the yogic precepts and the Taoist precepts, or yogic yamas and niyamas, and it's quite like, don't use your sexual energy inappropriately, don't steal, don't harm, things like that. And they're good. But these are the 9 Taoist ones. First, do not strongly pursue riches and honor if you happen to be poor and humble. Fair enough. Do not do evil. Great. Do not set yourself many taboos and avoidances. So that's an interesting one, because in a lot of the yogic contexts, you would do quite extreme things to become one with.
Just a shout out to all the vegans out there at this point.
Yeah, so middle path, right? Don't do anything extreme. No too many taboos and avoidances. Next, do not pray or sacrifice to demons of the spirits of the dead. Fair enough. And then here is where I get really interested. Do not strongly oppose anyone.
Interesting.
This is a vow. This is a precept.
So you're not going to be with your placard outside the building, chanting and sort of, shouting and screaming at the sky and all that stuff.
It gets better. It gets better, Mark. Do not consider yourself always right.
It's a good reminder for me. Appreciate that. I think I like these and need these, so maybe I should print this out somewhere and put it on my wall.
Next, this is even better. Okay, do not quarrel with others over what is right and wrong. If you get into a debate, be the first to concede.
Especially on Facebook. Wise woman from the Han Dynasty 2,000 years ago, predicting the future perfectly. So what are these called then? These are great. I really like these. These are like the Taoist commandments, right? What are they?
The basic 9 precepts in the Xiang or commentary from they're the celestial masters who took these.
In a way, though, precepts are themselves not very Taoist, are they? In a way, do you know what I mean?
No, that's not true. So this is a common misunderstanding: is that Taoism became a very strong religion in China. Especially as Buddhism came into China. So it had to compete, and they set up religious centers. They had precepts. They had gods that they could become, and there are lots of Taoist gods.
God of money, is he Taoist? Is the god of money Taoist? I heard there's a god of money in China.
Yeah. You can go and pray to that god of money, but ultimately, again, all of these gods, if you become a Taoist god, you're still just a clod of earth. You're still just soupy primordial oneness.
It's humbling. I like it.
This one. This is great. Do not praise yourself as a sage of great fame.
Even on Instagram. Come on, Mimi, let me do that on Instagram at least. How am I going to get any customers? Oh my God.